Good evening, everyone.
Howdy, howdy.
So, welcome back.
Yep, welcome.
As Prima Donna over here rolls his sleeves up.
I had to get my sweatshirt on. It's cold here in the shop. You're not doing anything, you freeze. Can you guys hear us okay?
Hopefully. I think we might be yelling at him. Here, let me turn this down a little bit. There we go.
I hope we're not yelling at them, but hopefully they can hear us too. Tonight, what we're going to, if you guys can hear us, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about different intake manifolds and.
Yep, we're good.
We're good?
Yeah, we're good.
Different intake manifold designs and carburetor spacers. So.
Yeah, so all your different intakes, why some are better, why some are not, why they make the different intakes, and why would you need a carb spacer? Why wouldn't you want a carb spacer? So different applications call for different things, and there's also different. Everyone's used to seeing the Edelbrock ones, but then of course you got my dad's, and then you got your custom tunnel ram ones, and
Yep.
So there's a reason behind a lot of them, and my dad will tell you why, because I don't know why, so I'm going to be learning along with you guys. Me, I just want what's the coolest one ever and just put it on.
Well, everybody wants a tunnel ram, right? This is just badass. Let's sticking up out of the hood with 2 carburetors. Yeah, I mean, that is cool. Well, first of all, what we'll do is we'll touch base on the different designs of the intake. So we got this is a single plane. So
here, you want to use that camera there?
All right, we can do that. So what that means is it's just got a common plenum, and all your runners come off of that common plenum. So it's only got one plane, and they call that a single plane. Then we have our dual plane, which So this,
which is a little heavier too.
So this dual planing, I don't know if you guys can see that in here. I'm sure you guys have all seen it anyway.
So you got your different levels. Right here is deeper than this side is. Whoop, yep, missed it. This side.
It's hard to do when you're on camera. So anyhow, dual plane, what that means is you got 4 runners that are on a higher plane than the other 4 runners, which are on a deeper plane. So if you look down in that plenum, I don't know if you can see in there or not, but it's got 2 different levels of plenum area. So that's a dual plane intake manifold. Now the dual plane intake manifold is good for low and mid-range torque, although this RPM intake by Edelbrock is actually pretty good for high RPM too. We've used these on several engines that were revving to 62 to 6,500 RPM, and they work really, really well. But a single plane intake will actually make more horsepower and sometimes even more torque at the higher RPM.
So what's these in there for?
All right, so what he's talking about, see those little gritty things in there?
Look like waffles.
Yeah, like a waffle maker in the bottom of that intake manifold. What that's for is it traps the fuel that falls out of suspension whenever it's being drawn down into the intake manifold. Because if you don't, what it'll do is it'll run down an intake port and make that cylinder run rich, and make it hard to tune. So what the manufacturers do is they put that little waffle pattern, as my son calls it, in there to trap the fuel, and then when the airspeed picks back up, it'll pull the fuel back up out of those little pockets down there and atomize it so it can burn.
Does the single plane have one?
Not all single planes do, no. And this one does. This one actually does not.
Oh, that one won't, probably because it's a fuel injection intake.
Well, even if it wasn't fuel injected, this one here's got port injection on it because this is from a Edelbrock Pro Flow 4, so it's got an injector for each one. But even the ones that are not fuel injected, they don't have anything down the bottom. Now, some of you guys may be aware they have a product, and it looks like we're wiggling over here. So anyhow, they have a product out there that's called a turtle, and basically what it is like I don't know what you'd want to call it. It's kind of like a grid-looking thing that you can epoxy in the bottom of a single plane
I
intake
seen
manifold.
you had them on your high-rise one.
Well, actually, does this one have it in there?
No,
it
you
does
don't
not.
have. I can go grab one, but
There is one right next to the valve seat machine out in the shop out there.
all right.
So what I do on my intake manifold is, mine's an open plenum intake manifold, but it's also considered a bathtub because it looks like a bathtub. So what we do, or I did with this, because I wanted to help the fuel stay suspended in the air, and if it does drop out of air, I don't want it to get sucked into the bottom of this plenum here and possibly even cause a fire because it's going to puddle down there at the bottom. I made this insert that my son just went and got. And I don't have a name for this, I just call it an air diffuser, okay? So basically what I did was, this goes down inside that plenum area. And let's see, I don't know if this one will fit or not. Nah, it doesn't look like it's machined, but we'll try. Yeah, I don't have it machined yet, but so what this does is it lines up with each one of the runners on the intake manifold. And if you notice, I got ribs in these. All right, they're not ribbed for her pleasure. That's ribbed for air fuel distribution.
It's ribbed for your pleasure.
They're ribbed for my engine's pleasure. So we do that, and that traps the fuel that falls out of suspension, and hopefully it gets picked back up at higher air speeds and mixes with fuel. The fuel mixes with air. I'm sorry, but anyhow. Fuel has to have 1 molecule of oxygen mixed with it. If it does not, it will not burn. I'm sure you guys have all seen demonstrations or even heard about it where a guy can throw a lit match right in a can of gas. Well, if there's no fumes on top, the match will just go out like you threw it in a can of water. But if the fumes that are rising off the top, they're mixing with oxygen, so they're going to ignite. You throw that match in there and you got fumes over top, and you're going to see a big fire.
All right, let's get some comments out of the way here. So we have Old School Twist saying good evening, everyone. Johnson CNC Design saying hey hey. John Dorbush, we're going to tear it up tonight.
Yes, we are.
Dwayne Myers says hey guys. Bill says hi, and he made it home.
Yep, Bill stopped by the shop earlier today.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Old School Twist sounds like good subjects, so I put in the comments what we were going to be talking about.
All right.
And Philip III says, "Okay, Don, I got my beer. Let's get let's start the show." Steven says, "Cheer, Poncho lovers." And then people are saying no sound. They were talking about the intro.
The intro
video.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So what we do is we just put the video on whenever we first come on the air, just to let everybody know we are coming on. There's no sound. I don't know, maybe.
I purposely don't put sound just in case, like, I don't know that there's a problem with the sound.
Well, the other part of that is too, we did on a couple of ours, we were playing sound on our lives, and they won't monetize us if we do that because it's a copyright thing.
Yeah.
So we just don't put anything on there. So, yep, you won't hear us until we get on the air.
John Dornbush says, we'd like some sound answers. Steven says, sound perfect now.
Perfect.
Salvatore Augusta says, hi, girls. Mark Marshall says, good to see this. What's your opinion on 4-hike spacer versus an open spacer?
4-hole, I'm sure is what he meant.
I'm sure he probably...
Yep.
I read it how they type it just in case. Just in case. I don't want to... I mean, I'm not trying to make them sound like they don't know what they're talking about, but I don't know what they're talking about. So I'm saying exactly how they type it just in case.
Well, there are, you know what? Go ahead. I don't know how many more. That's all our comments? Okay.
Well, not all of them, but we got 3 more.
All right, we'll go ahead and finish up there.
Mark Marshall said Don got cleaned up high and tight with the clippers. Mm-hmm. Old School Twist said that thing looks like good beer can chiller for a cooler. So I think he's talking about
This?
No, I think he's talking about your.
Yeah. You know what? We could fill that full of ice and cap off the ends and put all our beer. Well, 8 beers in there.
Philip III says, I think I saw that diffusion on another video and couldn't understand what I was looking at. Now I know.
There you go.
So let's
Yep.
go back to the question here. Mark Marshall just typed in hole. A 4-hole spacer versus an open spacer.
Right.
So you got full 4-hole, and then you're open.
Correct.
Now, would this still be considered a 4-hole?
All right, so this is actually a 4-hole taper spacer. So if you look, are we on this camera?
Yep.
All right, so if you look here, right underneath the carburetor sits over here. Underneath here, there's like a little pyramid here in the center. And what that does is these are actually tapered out. So they don't come straight down, they come tapered out. So they call this a tapered spacer. And this, you know, depending on the engine, every engine's different, every intake manifold's different. Cubic inch, stroke, all kinds of things affect these things. So, you know what, and I feel like I'm gonna make you guys dizzy. This thing's moving all over the place here. I'm sorry about it bouncing around.
Yeah, it's the table.
Yeah. So anyways, with a tapered spacer, what that does is you get the benefit of having a 4-hole and an open spacer, because it starts out as a 4-hole, and then as it transitions into the intake manifold, it turns into an open. And there's power to be made there. So the reason that you add a spacer to a car or an intake manifold is some of these intake manifolds are really shallow, like a factory intake, a factory dual plane intake. So what happens if your carburetor's only this far off the bottom of the plenum, your plenum's here and the carburetor's right here, because the air and fuel's coming out at such a rapid rate out of the bottom of that carburetor, it will actually cause, I don't want to call it reversion because it's not actually reversion, but turbulence, and the fuel will actually bounce back up towards the carburetor and cause a fuel distribution problem. So if you can raise the carburetor up, if you have the hood clearance, and you increase this gap in between there, it allows the air to and fuel to take time to be able to transition into the intake runner. So that's a big reason why you put a carb spacer on there. The other reason is because you want to increase your plenum volume a little bit, and what you're doing there is you're slowing the air speed down a little bit, which in turn also helps the fuel make the turn into the intake runners as well. And so there's all kinds of spacers. I mean, we got the open, like my son showed you, this 4-hole, which is, this one here is actually kind of a trick thing that was big back in the 80s, and I don't know, I've never tested with one of these, so I don't know if it works or doesn't work, but I had one in the shop. It's got little grooves cut in these runners here, or holes, and supposedly that helps swirl the fuel. If you look at it, I don't know if you can see it in the...
Might have to get a little closer.
In here or not, but it's got, these are not straight down, they're actually angled.
Yeah, they're almost twisted.
Yep, so it kind of twists the air and fuel coming out of the carburetor. And,
Is that an old Offenhauser spacer?
No, I think Transdap made these back in the day.
Transdap, okay.
Yeah, so I don't know that for sure. I don't remember now.
Because Old School Twist said that spacer right in front of Don looks like the ones off of a 360 dual quad intake I have. So
Well,
I think that one did come off a dual quad intake.
yeah, so like a lot of guys use these. They didn't have them grooves cut in them, but they use a spacer just like this. You're right. And that was a big thing back here in the day whenever we were running dual quad setups. Get the carburetor up a little bit higher. The other thing too is you got different style carburetor bases too.
Well, before you go too far with that, what's the dealio with this thing? So this has a taper on it.
It does.
And it's an open.
Yep, so it does. And that's kind of where I was going to go with this. This is a 4150 gasket, all right, which goes on the bottom here. Now it goes this way. All right, so that's basically a square bore, all right, which is your typical Holley carburetor you see. They call it, it's a 4150 style. That's what Holley designates it as. And then the top part of this is a Dominator, and you can see it's a lot bigger. So what this does,
so
this is actually an adapter. Yeah, so we can adapt a 4150 intake manifold to a Holley Dominator carburetor. And you can see the difference in the size of those carburetors. Quite a bit different.
Now, why would somebody want to do that?
Well, if you want a bigger carburetor.
Yeah, but aren't you choking it though?
No, actually, if you do this right, this can actually pick up the airspeed. So you know what, you're taking it, it's again like this thing here. That's what this spacer does. It picks up airspeed. And so this one here can do the same thing because you're transitioning from big to small, and it'll pick up the airspeed on the intake manifold. And that works good on an open plenum intake manifold, actually. So that's, you know, that's a pretty cool idea to do if you're, you know, if you're trying to make more low-end torque. As we all know, your 60 foot time is where it's all at. You know, after that, it's all mile an hour. So your 60 foot time dictates your ET. And the faster you can get that car to accelerate in the first 60 feet, the quicker your ET is going to be. And so there's all kinds of little tricks to do that. Use a tapered spacer. Use a, you know, this a different type of tapered spacer for open plenum. Or you could use a clover leaf. This is a clover leaf. So this one here on a Dominator carburetor goes around the throttle openings on the carburetor. But if you see, it's got indentations right here, which that'll help pick up the airspeed underneath the Dominator carburetor.
Then you got this. Looks like a piece of pie.
That's a wedge. Yeah, shove that in your butt.
Might pick up airspeed.
Yeah, your airspeed will pick up. I guarantee it. Anyway, this is a wedge style carburetor. So like on a boat or when the engine's sitting in a car, a lot of times the engine's sitting like that in the car or sitting like this in the car. You can put this underneath the carburetor. So if your engine sits like this, you put this on there, that makes the carburetor level, which makes the float levels level. So that this is a wedge style carb spacer, and we actually use these quite a bit on my Ram Air 5 deal because the intake manifold is just flat and all engines sit in the engine bay a little bit at an angle, so this will get the carburetor flat again. And it helps with the hood clearance too, with the air cleaner, because if it's sitting like this, the front edge of the air cleaner might hit your hood, where this will get it even so it's flat underneath the hood then.
They also, not only do they make aluminum ones, but they also make phenolic.
Yep.
And which is like a mixture of, I forget now. What is that a mixture of?
It's a polymer type substance, but there's all kinds of those too. They mix them with wood, they mix them with plastic, and high heat polymers. There's all kinds of ways that you can make a carburetor spacer. We've actually made carburetor spacers out of wood before, and those work actually pretty good too. They insulate the carburetor from heat.
I was going to say, you use a phenolic for heat.
Right.
Mostly, right?
Yep, that's what it's used for.
Now, is there any other benefits over that than an aluminum one?
You know, if you have if you got a street car and the fuel's percolating a little bit on you, you put a phenolic or an insulator spacer underneath the carburetor, it'll keep it from percolating. So yeah, there's definitely a benefit to that. On a race car, not so much, because you know it doesn't have time to really saturate the intake manifold with heat.
Let's see here. So we got Cindy Johnson said, 2 good-looking men. She must be watching another YouTube channel.
Yeah, right.
And Philip III says, I don't know if I'm spelling this right. Phenolic spacer, what is your opinion? So, okay, well, we touched on that. They're twinning tonight, Johnson CNC Design said. John Dornbush asked, have you ever used one of those spacers that had the 4 little propellers in them to help atomize the fuel? Remember seeing the ads for those. Wonder if they still make them. I think they were snake oil.
Yeah, you know what? There's a lot of snake oil out there. There was I don't remember seeing any of those. I did that spacer I just showed you with the grooves cut in it. I've seen those before, and that was kind of the same thing, kind of trying to create a swirl or twist underneath the carburetor. But one thing I did try, and it killed my horsepower. But they sold these things. They're not any. I don't even think they're available anymore. But they used to put sandwich a screen in the intake manifold gaskets at the head and between the intake manifold and at the head. And what they were saying that was for is to atomize fuel better, and it would burn more fuel, make more power. Bullshit. It doesn't work.
Peter Schilling says they sure got their money's worth at the barber shop.
Yes, they did. It's been a little while since I had a haircut. I agree. I got compliments today at the gym, as a matter of fact.
That's a great place to get compliments from.
Yeah,
a bunch of roided out guys.
Scary part is all dudes. Yeah. There was one girl made a compliment. My wife.
Well,
Go get it done.
Steven said his father has 2 old Offenhauser Pontiac intakes.
Nice.
Used one on his 77 Trans Am, but the shaker hood wouldn't fit because it was too tall.
Were they dual quads or single planes? Because they made a couple different intakes.
Yeah, they did. Philip III says, or asks, does the adapter choking it off, and can you reverse it? So he's talking about this one.
Well, it doesn't really choke it off. It does. It all depends on the application. So if you're building a high RPM deal, something that's like 7,000, 8,000 RPM, you probably wouldn't use this adapter. You'd just use a straight through or a straight spacer, or you could use something like this too. But yeah, this would probably hurt anything over 6,000 RPM horsepower wise, and at that point, that's what you're after. You're trying to move the torque peak up so you can make the horsepower at a higher RPM, because basically horsepower is nothing more than a calculation. So it's a mathematical equation off the torque the engine makes, and the higher up the RPM you can raise the torque, the more RPM you get out of the engine, and the more horsepower it makes, the more mile per hour you get out of the car. And there was something, oh, you know what I did want to touch base with? This spacer here, you can put it on upside down. It goes on, well, it's designed to go on like this, okay? So, but it can go on upside down like that too, which the carburetor sits over top of that. I had a situation where I found out that the engine actually liked it upside down. We put it on the carb or on the engine. We were in a hurry. We were dynoing for an Engine Master Challenge, and one of the guys was helping us, and he didn't really know how this went on. He put it on the intake manifold, bolted the carburetor on. We made a dyno pull, and for the Engine Master Challenge, you're looking for horsepower. That's why you're on the dyno. You're not there to get a glory number. You're there to find horsepower. So we're thinking about, well, we can adjust the timing, we can change the jetting, which we did, all those things. We can loop lash this thing and try to get a little more out of the lash. We can advance the camshaft, we can change the rocker ratios, we can change header tube sizes or whatever. And so one of the guys says, well, why don't we try a different carburetor spacer? So we pulled the intake manifold off, and this thing was upside down. So we thought, oh man, that's probably killing us. We could probably gain another 20 horsepower. So we flipped it over, and we dyno pulled, and we lost 22 horsepower. so yeah, we found 22 horsepower the wrong way, but believe it or not, it made more power upside down than it did the way it's designed. So just thought I'd share that story with you guys. You never know. You just never know. And that's what a dyno's for. A dyno isn't to get a glory number. Everybody wants to say, oh, my engine makes 550 horsepower. Mm-hmm. Who gives a rat's ass? You know what? I don't.
I do.
I want to see what the car runs. I don't care what it does on the dyno. I want to see how much how much mile per hour we're making. That'll tell me how much horsepower we're making.
Bill said, or asked, what about the Super Sucker?
Yeah, that's kind of what this is. There's different names for these, but they do make one that's HVH, I think, has one they call it a Super Sucker, and Wilson made one. It was called the high velocity, blah, blah, blah. I don't remember what it is. HVH is what the...
Didn't, like, I think Wilson actually threw the stack word in with this.
I don't know. I think Wilson's actually the first ones that started making those. And Wilson does a lot of intake manifolds for NASCAR, so I'm sure that it's a derivative of what they learned on NASCAR engines.
Tim says hello from Flint, Michigan. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Tim.
Mark Marshall, he said, so my ProFlow 4 throttle body is about an inch shorter than a Holley carb. Would
Correct.
my build benefit if I used a 1-inch tapered 4-hole spacer?
Usually, with a port fuel injection, you don't necessarily see a gain from that. This is primarily used to try to help fuel distribution with a carburetor. But you know what? You never know. You can try it and see. I don't never say it's not going to help, because every time I think something's not going to work, it ends up working. So sometimes it just defies common sense or logic, and you don't know until you try it. It's kind of like the idea of flipping this thing over. You know, who knew? I would have never thought to try it like that. It was just pure accident that happened.
Do you think that it would be better to slow the air down or speed it up with a multi-port fuel injection system?
Well,
Because that, I mean, you're talking, it's like, what, an inch maybe, if that, not even that, away from going right straight into the head.
Yeah, it may not benefit so much for atomizing the fuel better, but you do want to pick the airspeed up, because air has weight. And so if you pick the airspeed up, it artificially supercharges the intake. It'll actually ram more air into the cylinder in the valve events. And that's a good thing. That's why it's critical that the header's right. It's why it's critical that the intake manifold runner length is right. All those things play into the supercharging ram air effect that you get from it. And that's why an engine can operate at a 115 or 120% volumetric efficiency, normally aspirated. And that's what all these are for. These are all tools and tricks to try to get, to try to improve all that and get as much VE out of the engine as you possibly can.
Philip III said the wedge he had on an Offenhauser that took that angle into consideration on a dual quad, and the rear carb was taller than the front carb.
Yeah, yep.
I remember seeing Carl Glenn had one of those, didn't he?
Well, he had dual quads, so did your grandpa. But believe it or not, dual quad intakes, they don't make as much horsepower as a single plane with a 4150 style carburetor. They look cool. Yeah. And they do okay, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys seen the dyno results of that 406 that was in my 62 Catalina I sold my brother. We super tuned that on the dyno for the guy that bought the engine out of that car, and that we had the dual quads on it. We put the Performer RPM intake dual plane on it, and we put a Victor on it with 950 4150 style Holley or quick fuel carburetor, and it made the most horsepower and torque with the Victor intake and 950 CFM carb on a 406 cubic inch engine.
That's a lot of carb for that motor.
That's what everybody said, but it was the one that worked the best, and when you drove it on the street, you could feel it. It was like 20 or 30 horsepower better.
Wow. Old School Twist said the Offenhauser dual quads Philip is talking about is the same one he had, or has. And Steven says both Offenhauser intakes are single carb. And see, to me though, one like Offenhauser's been around for a very long time.
Oh yeah.
And every time I would see one on the older cars, I'm like, man, those things look cheap.
Cheap?
Well, I know they're not cheap, but they just like.
Well, they're kind of flat. You know what? They don't look like a performance intake manifold, even though they are.
Well, you still had the flashing on like on them and stuff. Like they just looked like
they were crude looking.
Yeah,
yeah. They were compared to Edelbrock. Edelbrock does a very nice job with appearance.
Oh, it's all about appearance with them.
Yeah.
I mean, they have good performance too, but
right. You know what? I'm an old school racer. Chrome don't make you go faster, and pretty don't make you go faster.
Yeah, but it looks nice when you're at a car show.
Yeah, I know. But Oscar
Philip
Wilson-
III says, I'm thinking street strip have a dominator intake and use the spacer to run a smaller carb for the street.
Yeah, you know, smaller carburetors, I'm the wrong guy to talk to about that, because I put as big a carburetor as I can on everything we do. And they always pick up power. I love the quadrajet carburetor, so you know, don't get me wrong, there is a place for smaller Venturis, but if I had my ruthers, I'll take a Dominator over a quadrajet any day if I'm going to try to make horsepower. I ran a Dominator on my street car for years, and fuel economy sucks, but man, I'll tell you what, that thing was a beast.
Mark Marshall said, I thought perhaps the extra plenum volume on the big displacement build would be a good thing.
Well, you know, that's something that we're going to probably touch base on a podcast. That's such a deep subject that we have to just do plenum volume. And we can touch base on that a little bit, but there's some videos on YouTube that are good that show, actually there's one on there, it's really cool. And John Marcel is the one that turned me on to this. They're dynoing a Viper engine, and of course it's fuel injected. And anyhow, they wanted to test the theory of plenum volume. And this is kind of scary, but what they did, and it's probably still out there, they actually took the top off the intake manifold while the engine's running, because it's got a throttle body on it, remember. So they had to physically remove the top with the throttle body and while it's under load on the dyno so it wouldn't run away. And then they did a dyno pull with that thing and shut the engine off. And believe it or not, it didn't make any difference in horsepower. I was amazed.
Oh, okay. So Steven asked, he wants to run a single turbo through a blow-through carb at low boost. What's safe, 7 to 8 pounds or PSI? Would I need to run a lower compression piston than say 9 to 10 to 1?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you can, if it's got an aluminum cylinder head on it, I don't know if it's aluminum head or iron head, but if you got aluminum head on it and you're going to run E85, you can run 11 to 1 compression with all the way up to 20 pounds of boost. So it just depends on the application. You're going to have to, you know, determine what you want to do with it. If it's an iron head engine, yeah, you probably don't want any more than about 8 to 1 compression.
Philip III said, on boosted engines, is there a concern with blowing the valves open, or does it slow the closing of a valve?
It definitely affects the intake valve big time. The exhaust side, because you have so much cylinder pressure, will break rocker arms. It'll break an exhaust rocker arm or an intake rocker arm, depending on the valve timing events. So you have to run a stainless steel rocker. You can't use an aluminum rocker. And on the intake side, depending on how much boost you want to run, because you got to remember, it's square area of the back of the valve. It's not just the pressure coming in. So you got an area that's big, and you got 20 psi. It might actually see like 60 psi or 60 more pounds of pressure on that valve when it's pushing on it. So I always tell the guys who run boosted application, let's run about 60 to 80 pounds more spring pressure on the intake side than you do the exhaust.
Now, do you have to get a any like a special valve too, like a not a stainless steel valve, but a like a hardened steel valve or anything?
Well, depending on the boost level, yeah. I mean, titanium valves are good, but on the exhaust side, a lot of guys because of the high heat from the boosted application, they run a material called Inconel, and everybody calls them Inconel valves, but that's actually a trademark name I don't know the exact makeup of that material. It's a malleable blah, 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 something or another.
And it's a coating too, right? It's
no,
not.
no, they actually make the valve out of a different material.
Oh, so I thought Inconel was like a coating around the metal that they use.
No, you can get the valves coated too, and if you're going to run a titanium valve, you really should get them coated.
Okay.
But yeah, so you can use titanium, you can use stainless steel on the intake and exhaust with lower boost stuff. Even up to, 25, 30 pounds of boost, you can run stainless. It isn't going to hurt a thing.
Old School Twist said, I think almost all the ponchos I got out of the junkyards in the 80s had a torquer or a performer on them.
Yeah.
Pretty sure I had about 4 of each. Original torquer, not the torquer 2.
Yeah. And that intake manifold is really not that good of an intake. That was what we had to choose from back in the day. And if you look at that thing, and I have one of those around here somewhere, if I'd have thought about it, we'd have dug it out. But the back 4 runners are bigger than the 4 front runners. And their theory on that was because it was a spread bore design, the 2 small primary bores on the carburetor on a quadrajet as opposed to the 2 big ones on the back. I think that's why they did that, but man, that just doesn't make any sense if you start thinking about it. Why would you restrict half of your engine? That's fully 50% of the engine you're going to restrict. Not a good idea. So that intake, what people would do, especially the super stockers back in the day, what they would do is they'd buy 2 of them, cut them in half, and use the 2 back halves and make them all big runners. So, but yeah, they had that, and the performer intake manifold, throw that thing in the trash or hang it on the wall. Make it a paperweight. Hold your weight or papers down on your desk. I don't care what you do with it. It is not as good as a factory intake, so don't even use the thing.
Philip III says, Chrome don't get you home, but it will get you laid.
So will beer.
And
alcohol, I should say.
And then Tom Bop, it says, hello from Euclid. You guys did the Pro Flow 4 on my 70 GTO and love it. I have
awesome.
seen a tri-power with fuel injection setup. Do you know anything about them, and are they better, worse, or no difference, Tom?
You know what? Honestly, I have not tried the tri-power setup yet, and the reason is because FI Tech there is another company that just came out with one. I think it's TMP or TPM carburetors. John Dornbush probably knows who they are, but anyway, the FI Tech stuff, I've had such bad luck with that stuff, you can't talk me into using it ever again. And so we stay clear of that, but FI Tech's got a tri-power setup. And there is another company that is making them for Pontiacs actually too, and it's like 3 Holley 2-barrels. And I want to check them out next and see how those work out. But the other thing you can do too is you can get it. We were going to build a tri-power setup for a customer of ours, and unfortunately he had to bail on his project because of other financial obligation. But anyway, we were going to take a factory, the aluminum reproduction of the 66 tri-power intake, weld the bungs on it for port injectors. Man, I got something stuck in my throat. But anyway, put port injectors on this thing and run just 3 carburetors. It doesn't have to be anything running through them. They'd look stock. And put a TPS or a throttle position sensor on the center carburetor, and use the ECU from Pro Flow 4 on it. So we were going to build one ourselves that looked factory. It would have looked like a factory tri-power, except for you'd see all the injectors lined up on the thing. But
Okay, Steven says, yes, the low boost motor will have Edelbrock aluminum heads, and he's leading towards E85 fuel.
Oh yeah, you can run 11-to-1 compression on that, no problem.
And he also said, yes, Inconel is a brand. We fab a lot of parts out of at his shop. TIG filler rods are wildly expensive, similar to cast ollie cost or hast ollie cost.
What is it?
I never heard of that, so I don't know. Maybe cast ollie. Maybe that's what he meant. Right there.
It's probably some kind of an alloy, but I'm not sure what he means by that either.
And then Bill says, if it doesn't run, chrome it.
Sounds like some of these guys on here would rather be blown. I'm into that.
Right? So why would you want to use a dual plane?
Well, it's for torque. You know what? If you got a low RPM deal, a dual plane intake manifold does make a little bit more torque down low. Most of the stuff that we build, our most popular engine build that we do here is we call it our Performance Street build, which is basically a warmed over factory engine that we port the heads a little bit, put a decent sized cam. You know, what amazes me is how a lot of old school guys are scared to death of camshafts that are 230, 240, 250 at 50. Don't be afraid of those cams. The only reason that everybody's afraid of them is because if they're not tuned right, you'll hear the videos. I mean, you listen to our engines and then listen to somebody else that has the same cam in them, and there's a night and day difference. And the reason is because I got them tuned right. And if they're tuned right, them big cams are pussycats on the street. But whenever you nail the throttle, they turn into a lion. So don't be afraid of big cams.
John Dornbush says Autotrend makes Billet 2G style and Storm 97 EFI.
Okay. There's another company out there too, and they're out, I think, towards Washington State, somewhere out west out there, but TMP comes to mind. I think that's the manufacturer or the company name.
And then Steven, it is Haste or Hast Ollie. I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce that word, but it is very
Alloy,
chemical resistant, super high grade stainless alloy that's very expensive.
Ah, okay.
So there you go. Learn something new.
There you go. Yep.
So why does the dual plane make more torque than the open one?
Yeah, because you're increasing the signal to the vacuum signal to the carburetor. So instead of having a big open plenum where it's dealing with all the pulses from all 8 cylinders, it only has to deal with 4. And with the timing events of the firing order, it actually generates a little bit more vacuum when you split it up like that on each side of the carburetor. So it pulls a little better on the booster.
Old School Twist says it's Speedmaster with laughing emojis.
Yeah, Speedmaster is another company you don't want nothing to do with. That it's an American company that sells Chinese products, but they're very poor quality. They look pretty, but
I don't even think they look pretty.
we've had them here, and man, everything that we've had from Speedmaster, everything has failed, and I'm scared to death of it. So that distributor that failed in Grant's Buick, that video we did, I think that was a Speedmaster. It was sold at Summit, but it was a Speedmaster. And that thing didn't last 15 minutes and it burned up.
If you had a carburetor sitting over top of an intake, a special intake that was made with 8 holes, and you had a thing that'd spin just to open up that hole to the firing order, would that make more power?
Well, you know what? Actually, GM did that. It was fuel injected, but it wasn't a carburetor. But what they did was they had it was a throttle body design that had individual, like, tubes, I guess you'd call it, running to each runner, and it would fire each one of those with a firing order. And they only had it for a year or two, and obviously there must have been a problem with it. And I know there was a lot of people that had trouble with that. So it's kind of like the intake port that GM came out with on Vortec engines. It's got like a big high ridge on the one side, and the whole theory of that is to swirl the fuel and air through the port, and that didn't work real well either.
John Dornbush says, I believe Moon also offered a tri-power EFI, but I don't know if they ever got the bugs worked out of it.
I don't know. Didn't realize they did. So.
I didn't know Moon was still around.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. So yeah, cool.
Because I mean, that's a.
You know
I
what?
love their design.
John's my go-to guy when I need to find out a company or something, a product that I'm not really aware of or fully up on, because John, I don't know, he must stay up all night long surfing the internet. That's the only thing I can figure. The guy knows all these different companies, and he knows what they sell, and he knows where they're at, and he knows all that stuff. And
He's very good at retaining information.
Well, he's an encyclopedia when it comes to products.
So, like an a single plane intake, would that be just for like a high flow, high RPM motor only?
No, like that 406 that I was just telling everybody about. We dynoed that thing. I think we started the pool at 3,000 RPM, and man, even at 3,000 RPM over all the other intakes, it made more torque with the single plane intake. So all depends on the application. You know, and that little 406, that had a 240. I think that I custom ground that cam in that, and I don't remember the specs exactly. They're probably in that drawer right behind you in that desk, but we're not going to dig them out right now because I got a stack of cam cards this thick.
Yep.
From all the engines I built. But anyway, it was a custom ground hydraulic flat tappet cam, and it was I want to say 246, 252 at 50 with a 106 lobe separation. And that thing was that little 400's a torque monster.
Stevens said that he saw a test on those Chinese Speedmaster heads when there was a variance of like 25 pounds of spring pressure, and the springs looked like they were made from melted down guardrails and Coke cans.
If you get online and you start punching in Speedmaster anything, I don't care if it's camshaft, distributor, intake manifold, fuel injection, I don't care what it is, you will find pages and pages and pages of failures, and it's just not worth it. If you guys want to take the chance, go for it, but I am not going to do that to a customer. I will not buy their products and put them on a customer engine. We got enough problems dealing with quality name brand stuff that comes out of China right now that I don't need to add that to it.
Right? Trying to get caught up where I'm at. Okay. Jace Combs. I'm sorry if I messed up your name, but I think that's how you would say that. Wants to know, have you tested your Rammer 5 heads on an older, not rebuilt, junkyard condition engine before?
No. I'd be afraid to.
That might be a YouTube video.
Yeah, well, that one will blow up, but then it'll ruin my head.
Oh, it's the price to pay. Scott Story. Would you recommend Eagle H-beam rods with the L19 bolt-up grade for an engine making 1,200 horsepower, 1,200-ish horsepower?
Well, so I'm assuming you're probably going to boost that thing, and I would not recommend that. No, that connecting rod's not going to hold up to boost. Again, you can get online and you can look at videos of guys that have tried to do that, and that's the ones where you see them rods all crunched together, look like a pretzel. Because under boost, you got to remember, it's not pulling anymore; it's pushing on that rod, and unless you have a boost designed rod, not a good idea. I would definitely go with an A-beam or a good quality. I think they have some H-beams out there that'll hold up to boost, but an A-beam connecting rod is what I would go with.
Would you go with a billet? at
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah, billet or a really high grade forging.
Philip III says he is an encyclopedia of absolutely useless information. And John Dornbush says, I am a font of useless. Oh boy. Hold on a second. Lost it.
That's good. We're getting a lot of comments tonight.
Yes, we
Thank you,
are.
guys.
Went away.
It did go away. He
What is-
must have deleted it.
John, are you drunk?
Yep, he retracted his message. SB1320 said, what 67 and earlier Pontiac would you want to own? What post 67 would you own?
Well, I own one. I got a 61 Catalina convertible. So I love the looks of that car. And that was the year I was born, too. So that's why I like that car so much. But, and if it wasn't a 61 Catalina convertible, I'd probably, my next choice would be like 63 Tempest or, let's see, 65 GTOs. I love 65 GTOs. That's my year. I love that car.
Yeah,
They were just so stylish looking with that chrome back on the back of them and that big chrome belt and the dual stacked headlights on the front. The grills look so nice in those cars.
and it looked futuristic.
Yeah, it did. Yes, it did. I love those cars. I've had several of them. I got another one right now. I got a 65 post car.
Yeah. John Dornbush said Speedmaster was an industry and company who farmed all their stuff to China.
Every
It's too
piece.
bad because Australia has a very good aerospace and machining industry.
And it's a shame because you know what? I think that what John's alluding to is Speedmaster actually originated in Australia, I believe. And but they got another group over there. It's called Yellow Terra, and their products are pretty decent. Australian products are very good. When they first started coming to the United States before all the tariffs took them down, I was going to be a dealer for Yellow Terra, and they had a lot of good stuff for Pontiacs. I wish they would have been able to overcome all the tariffs and things that were going on, but yeah. But John's right. Speedmaster is all Chinese. It's all whored out to the Chinese, and it's as cheap as you. How in the world can a company sell a set of cylinder heads, fully loaded, valve springs, retainers, keepers, valves, assembled, aluminum cylinder heads,
Ready to bolt on.
ready to bolt on for like $1,700? There's no way. There is no way you're getting a quality product. The valves that I use, I'm not going to mention names, but the valves that I use are one-piece forged valves. They're severe duty. They're not a lot of valves. I don't know if some of you guys may be aware of this, but a lot of valves are spun weld together. So they spin the stem this way and they spin the head this way, and they meet it up in the middle and they weld themselves together. The valves I use are not that way. They're one-piece forged valves. They don't break. If one of them valves collides with a piston, it bends. It doesn't break, and you increase your chances of an engine survival if that happens by 1,000%. And
Well, it happened to the Raven, didn't it?
yeah, I do believe so. Yes, exactly. And but he had a titanium valve, I think, in that thing, and it actually busted a head off of it. And
wow.
and I'm not going to mention the name of the company that did that valve either, but that was just a fluke because that company he bought those valves from is a very, very good company. They do a lot of NASCAR stuff, so I don't know what happened there. That was just a fluke. But yeah, so you know, back to the cylinder heads, selling them things for so cheap. I mean, my valves that I buy for all the stuff that I do around here, for all my engine builds and everything, my valves are $400 a set. So, all right, we got $400 just in valves, and they're selling the heads for $1,800 bucks. I don't know how they can do it. The valve springs I use are right around 150 for flat tappet cam, and some of the roller stuff is $1,200–1,300 for springs. And then you got retainers and keepers. If you buy a quality name brand part that's made out of chromoly steel, you're talking about, you know, another between $100 and $130 in retainers and keepers. So you start doing the math and figuring it out. You're not getting a very good product if you can buy it for $1,800. I don't care who's making it.
Dale Lutterly, is there any plans on a tunnel ram for the Rammer 5 head?
It's funny you mentioned that. Absolutely there is.
Yep.
And working with another fellow Facebook guy, and we're gonna, whenever I get it here, I ordered one up, and we're gonna have it probably in about 2 or 3 weeks. So it'll be after the first of the year, I'm guessing. But when we get it here, I'll definitely show everybody what it looks like.
Philip the Thursdays is on beer number 3. You better get catching up.
I know, I'm only on 2. I'm a sissy.
Old School Twist says, don't the Callies comp start hold boost? They said they did.
Yeah, you know what? Cali stuff's all made in the United States, and that's a good quality product, and definitely something you want to look at. Crowler used to have a lot of their stuff made in the United States, and I don't know if they still do or not, but Crowler's got a good connecting rod. Another company that we use is, I was just thinking of it. Not Cali's, not Crowler. Keep thinking K1, and K1's not it. It'll come to me. Anyhow, there's several good companies out there, and actually, to be honest with you, a good connecting rod to use for that engine would be the Bill Miller aluminum connecting rod. They forge all their blanks, and that aluminum connecting rod will absorb the energy from the pressure in the cylinder, and it'll save rod bearings. They're lighter weight, and they don't fold up. I mean, top fuel cars all use his rods, and they don't fold them up. If they spit a rod out, it's not because the rod failed. It's because something else failed and filled the cylinder full of fluid. And because nitromethane they're dumping buckets of nitromethane in that cylinder, and whenever it goes out, you're going to hydraulic a cylinder, and it's going to spit the crank and the rod out.
Jay said, you got the name right. Would like to see that test because that's my plan in the near future. So, yeah.
What's that?
He's going to be putting Rammer 5 head on a junkyard motor.
Oh boy.
Scott said he saw the Speedmaster booth at PRI. He just kind of avoided it, to be honest.
Yeah.
And Philip III says, Don, we are both 61 models. Mark Marshall says, Don, were my counterweights a larger diameter than normal, or were they thicker? Wondering what caused the block clearance issues.
That bigger outside diameter, because keep in mind too, Mark, that block was assembled with another rotating assembly in it, and it was a 4.5 inch stroke, where yours is 4 3/750. So it wasn't the stroke of your crank that caused it. It was all because the counterweights are bigger outside circumference compared to like an Eagle or a Scat crank, or Moldex too, like a billet crank or a Bryant. So they're definitely bigger in diameter. Maybe Molnar did that because it'll make it a little easier to balance, because the closer you get to the center line of the crank, the harder it is to balance. And so if you can spread that out, if you got room, which obviously we didn't in that block, makes it easier to balance the crankshaft.
Tom says, need to make a date to discuss engine build on my 7400 running 700 R4 and 373 gears in the rear end. Sun blew it up in September.
Bummer.
And Steven says, the best bang for your buck without a doubt for Pontiac heads is DCI Rammer heads. And Peter Schilling says, I was watching something where in 1963, a Pontiac Tempest
Beat
with a
all them Corvettes.
with a 421 dominated the American Cup Challenge at Daytona, running against Ferraris, Porsche, and other American models, averaging 170 mile an hour.
Yeah, the part that they don't tell you in all those articles, that Pontiac actually lapped the field 3 times. He didn't beat him, he smoked him.
John Dornbush said Oliver.
Oliver connecting rod, yeah,
Yep.
that's a good rod, yep. And that's what we use a lot of, is Oliver connecting rods.
Old School Twist says, just asking because I bought a set for my build and it was night and day difference from the Eagle rods I had.
Yeah. Yeah, Cali's is good stuff. I wish they would make crankshafts for Pontiacs. They don't, but I wish they would, because they make all their forgings here in the United States.
And then Dale's wondering, will there be 2 tops for the new Rammer 5-tunnel ram for 4150 and 4500?
Currently, there's only 1 top available, but we can work on that. We're going to definitely have that, and possibly 3 Dominators.
Old School Twist said he's seen Molnar rods in a couple of your videos. I hear they are pretty stout.
They are. They're a little bit beefier. So, you know, if like Mark Marshall's build, because his stroke's only 4.3750, I'm not too concerned with connecting rod to camshaft interference. But if it was a 4.5-inch stroke crank in that engine, I would be really concerned that the connecting rod would collide with a lobe on the camshaft. And we have to deal with that every once in a while, even with if we use a Cali's connecting rod or an Oliver or whatever. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different ones that we use. Crower, I got an engine that I bought a set of Crower rods for. Those are pretty beefy too, but yeah, the Molnar stuff is definitely beefy, and I understand why he did that. He's wanting to give it strength, and especially the connecting rod we got from Mark Marshall's deal. His is actually a boosted connecting rod, so it's really beefy. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit heavier, not a lot heavier, but it is a little heavier than a normal connecting rod.
Now, if you go with a heavier connecting rod, does that like wear out bearings that for the crankshaft and stuff? The rod bearings on the crank and the main caps?
No.
Because you got more of a heavier mass that you're trying to rotate?
No, primarily what you want to reduce mass for is
just rev?
Inertia and high RPM stuff, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because you got to remember, you're pushing that piston up, but you got to pull it back down too. Mm-hmm. And it's doing it at a lightning speed. I mean, you can't even see the piston moving up and down that bore.
Nope.
It's moving so fast.
Dale says Yahoo. So he sounds like he's pretty excited about the tunnel ram for your Rammer 5 head.
Awesome. Yeah, we're excited about that too.
Philip III wants to know, did you get the pics on the 58 tow truck?
I did. You know what? That thing's a little rougher than I'm looking for, and it looks like it's a homemade tow truck. I'd rather have one that was a little bit more commercialized. So it's a cool truck, don't get me wrong, but not quite what I'm looking for. That guy, if it's the same guy that's got all them other cars that you sent me pictures on, that little Fiat Topia or whatever they call those things, that's a pretty cool ride. And then I think there was another foreign car he's got, a Volvo or something. I don't remember now what it is, but Anglia. No, it wasn't Anglia. Holdren maybe? I don't know.
Anglia in the comments.
Well,
yep. He sent him pics of the Anglia that he mentioned on another show. Did you get them?
Yep.
So, yep.
Yep, that's a pretty cool car. Yep. I'm looking for something crazy to do for a street, and I don't want the traditional. I want something that's going to stand out. Another thing I'm still looking for too, guys, I mean, we're going to build the 71 Le Mans that we have because I got it and I want to get it done, but I really want like a early 60s Corvette, preferably like an old super stock car or a gasser style car. And the reason I want to do that is because when we go to the Pontiac race, I want to stand out from the rest of the crowd. It's going to have a Ram Air 5 engine. It ain't going to have a Chevy engine. It's going to have a Pontiac engine. And it'll have my Ram Air 5, and it'll probably have my stack injection on it. But I want to be able to stand out whenever I go to the racetrack. And back in the day, guys did that all the time. I mean, they would put a Cadillac or a Buick or a Pontiac engine in a Chevy, and you know, that was just normal. You know, that happened all the time.
Mark Marshall says, interesting. He says, I'm sure you will rotate the assembly upside down with the pan off so you can visually see the rods clear the cam for two full rotations.
Oh, absolutely. That's part of our check. I don't, Mark, you want to watch the video I shared today or this evening on degreeing your camshaft. And we're going to cover that again, not tonight, because again, that's a little bit lengthy conversation, but the timing marks on these new timing gear sets, they are never right, never. So anybody that is throwing an engine together today and they are not degreeing their camshaft, they're either going to create a lot of problems for themselves or they're giving up a lot of horsepower.
Or both.
Yeah.
John Dornbush says Topolino.
Yeah, Topolino, I think is how they say that. Yep. And you know what? Maybe Philip can share a picture of that thing. It's cool. I mean, it's got a stretch wheelbase on it like they did back in the day when they turned those things into gassers, and it's that would be a cool street car. The only thing is, it's a single seater. You can't get two people in it.
Yeah. Old school twist said Dale literally could tell you where to get the 57 GMC you like.
Yeah. That's another thing I was thinking about. I was thinking about if I could find like a 56 or 57 GMC, turn that into a gasser and put a Pontiac Ram Air 5 in that. That would be a cool drag truck.
And Philip III says Volvo, Nash, and Angela. Is it Angela or Angela?
Anglia.
Angula. That's
Anglia. Yeah.
Angula. And I'll get the Angula for myself then with a blown Pontiac and DCI heads.
That'd be cool.
I'll check my lotto tickets.
It's only money and we can't take it with us.
And Mark Marshall says I'll look for it. He was pretty busy today.
Yeah. Yep, I just shared that this afternoon or later this evening, but yeah, definitely watch that video. And we're going to go in more depth on that too.
He thought it was a Angula. Philip III said, I'm struggling with that one.
Anglia.
Anglia. Well, and when I see it, my brain wants to go Angelica. I don't know why, but it just wants to say Angelica. I'm fighting my brain.
Well, Angelica, what was that, in the Little Mermaids or something? I don't know.
No.
What was that?
Angelica was from Rugrats.
Yeah.
Oh, Rugrats, okay. I don't watch TV, so I don't know.
Well, your daughter watched that show, I can guarantee you.
Well, I can guarantee you I wasn't watching it if she was.
And Topolino, question mark, Philip III said.
Yep.
So what's a Topolino?
That, you know what? I don't have pictures of it, but they're cool cars. Yeah, maybe you can find one online and share it. But you know what? Philip needs to share that thing. Apparently he's pretty internet savvy, so.
I don't know if you can do pictures in the
chats.
No,
Okay.
I think just you guys can.
All right. Yeah, it was like a 1933 Anglia Topolia.
And apparently it's a Fiat.
They got Fiats too. Well, you know what?
Yeah. Images.
Might have been a company.
Like, the Fiat 500 Topolino.
Okay, yeah. I'll put in Anglia. 1933 Anglia.
The Christmas season Angelica.
The Christmas
Yeah,
season Angelica.
or the Angelica. You know what? You can call it whatever you want. I don't care.
Oh, that's what those are.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I
That-
thought
that-
those were Chevys.
No. That's not like the one that Philip shared with me, but that's a cool one too. I like that body style.
Yeah.
Yep. There's the Angelica.
Yep, there's the Angelica.
And he's not even drinking.
Nope.
That's like that other one that Philip shared with me right there. I don't know if you guys can see that or not,
Yep.
but okay. Yeah, so what is that one?
That is a Willys. Or no.
No, that's
that is a Austin Dorset.
Huh.
1948 Austin Dorset full frame.
I'm not into the foreign cars that much, guys, so I don't really know what these things are, but they're cool looking cars.
And there's a Willys sedan delivery.
Yeah, now that one I know.
Yeah, I always thought that these were 34 like
Chevys or something. No.
Yeah.
They kind of had the same style back there over in Europe. I mean, those are cool cars. Real short wheelbase, though.
Oh, yeah.
They were shorter wheelbase than what we had here.
And
That's because the roads are only big enough for a bicycle over there.
Philip III says, just share the pics I sent you. I'm not on his computer, so can't do that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
an old Beaumont would be good for the Ram Air 5. Old School Twist said. And Philip III says, now you got me looking it up. And then Old School Twist says, how about a Morris Minor mini shoebox Ford?
Morris Minor. That would be cool. You know, the tunnel port head, the Ram Air 5 head, some of you guys probably are aware of it, but maybe some of you aren't, but that is actually a Ford cylinder head. And how that all developed, maybe one night I'll have to get Dimitri Toth here. His father's the one that actually did all the tooling for the Ram Air 5 stuff. And Dimitri still works for GM. He started there out of high school, and I don't know how old Dimitri is now, but he's got to be close to, I don't know, 73, 74, still working at GM. Yeah. And so anyways, he shared a story with me on all that stuff and how it's developed. And what was really cool is that back in the day, you know, it was always race on Sunday, sell on Monday. And so all the manufacturers are at the racetrack for the big events. And Ford showed up with that tunnel port head. And of course, all those engineers know each other from GM, Ford, and Chrysler. And what had happened was the GM engineer walked over and was looking at the Ford tunnel port on the Ford engine, and just jokingly said to the guy, he says, "Man, I'd love to have that head, and I'll bring it back to you Monday." Well, before he left the track that day, the guy pulled the head off the engine. The other engineer pulled it off the engine, handed it to him, says, "Make sure I get this back Monday." And that's how the Ford tunnel port turned into a Pontiac Ram Air 5 head.
Beaumont look like?
Kind of like a Chevy.
Yeah.
Yeah, more like like a Chevelle or Impala.
Because that's what the girl named Big Blue Bus is called, the Mr. Beaumont.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So I was like, oh, what's it look like?
They were more boxy than the Pontiacs.
Well, that could be why the bus is called the Mr. Beaumont.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Right here's a
There's a
Gasser
Beaumont. Yep, that's a Chevelle version of the Beaumont. They had a Beaumont and they had another one too. John Dornbush, help me out here. What was the other one? Parisian? No. What the heck was the other one? They had another one too.
Philip III says he likes both the 33 Willys and the 41 Willys. And then
I love the 4041 Willys.
John Dornbush says, how about my delivery? You can send me an engine for that.
I like you, John. I don't like you that good. Yeah, there's some cool cars on there.
Acadian Pontiac Beaumont?
Yep. Pontiac Beaumont. There was another one too. I can't think of the name of it. What are the Canadian Pontiacs? Just punch in Canadian Pontiac.
That's Beaumont SD.
Speaking of Canadian Pontiacs, one of the local dealers here's got a 60, I want to say it's a 67, and it's got the 327, 350 horse engine in it, which I guess is really, really rare. I don't know if he still has it or not, but yeah, that's a sweet car if somebody's interested.
So
It would be the full-size Pontiacs. I don't know what they called those.
Atmosphere,
No.
Autosphere. Let me just go to all then, real quick.
I'll punch in full-size Canadian Pontiac from 1965.
Laurentian
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, Tom Bob. here
from the
put that on it.
Catalina, so it must have been like a Catalina, but a little bit different.
Lucerne or
Laurentian.
Laurentian or something like that. Yeah. So they had the Beaumont and they had those, and those are cool cars.
Right here's the Pontiacs I like.
Yeah. What is that? Like a 1870?
I think this one might be an 1889 or the 1904.
1904. Really? Is that new, huh?
Yeah.
Nope. I like the Pontiac Oaklands. You know what? That's another cool car that I would maybe build. I'd love to build like a 1933 Pontiac Coupe. Put a Ram Air 5 with stack injection in that. That would be badass.
The Parisian.
Parisian.
I never could say that one.
Yep. They had the Parisian, the Lucerne, and then the Beaumont.
Philip III said, yes, it did look like a Chevelle. And then Steven said, a 67 GTO is peak aesthetics for me as far as those style shapes, the headlights and grill, just perfection. And then Philip III says, do you remember the 2+2 and the Pontiac Granville?
Oh, yeah. I love Pontiac Granvilles.
You had a 2+2 Catalina.
No.
Or a Grand Prix, that white one.
Which one's that?
It was like a...
I've had so many cars, I don't remember that one.
60-something, 66.
Oh.
It was back at the old shop. Because it was white with black interior. And
Oh, no, that was 63 Grand Prix.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It had the 2.2 on the door panels.
No, what you're thinking of is I had a console out of a 2+2, and it was sitting on the floor.
Oh. I just remember you like, don't scratch this.
Yeah, that console's rare, hard to find.
And then Philip Thirst says, of any Pontiac I could have, a 66 2.2 convertible would be the Shine.
Yeah, that's cool. I got a guy over in New York, Connecticut area. I haven't talked to him in a while. He wanted me to rebuild the engine in his car. He swears up and down that he has a I think it's a 1967 2+2 with a 421 tri-power in it, and his dad ordered it from the factory. And he's got the build sheet and everything. I said, well, if he did, it's got to be the last one built because they didn't have a tri-power in 67. And they didn't have the 421 in 67 either.
I was going to say, Philip Thirst says, I believe the 66 2.2 was the last year for the 421.
Yep, 66 was the last year for the 421, yep.
And then Steven says, I need a Ram Air 5 for a 1926. Can't see there's a heart thing in the way. 1926.
27 something.
6.
Yeah, the heart emoji thing is in the way.
Yeah, I can't. Someone else comment so I can see it. There we go. I need a Raymer 5 for a 1926 627.
Nice. Yeah, that would be cool.
Tom says there is a 62 Tempest T-bucket rod. I posted the link to earlier. It was wicked looking.
Yeah, the 62 Tempests are so ugly, they look cool.
I think they look cool.
It's not the 63. It's the 62. Those
That's
things
my
are ugly.
excuse. So ugly. I'm just cool.
That's why I married you.
My
babe.
daughter's over here saying she's so ugly, she's cool.
That's why I married you.
Oh, you're getting a t-shirt that says that.
Oh no, I want my great granddaughter. We had Christmas at their house last weekend because we're going to try to go to Nashville. My Suburban's acting up right now, and I don't know if I'm going to get it fixed in time. Anyway, my son's granddaughter, when she was opening up her Christmas presents, she was so damn cute. Every one she opened up, I got this. I got this.
Yep.
I got this.
So now I'm getting me a T-shirt that says I got this.
Yeah, you're really cute when Aubrey says it.
Oh yeah, that was way cuter when she said it to me.
I got this.
Well, guys, it's 8:21. I think we're going to wrap things up here and let you guys get back to your lives, and we're going to try to get the old man out of here so that way he can go home and spend time with my mom. And but thanks for hanging out with us.
4 o'clock comes awful early in the morning.
Yes, it does.
And I gotta go home and get a shower and eat dinner yet.
But thanks for hanging out with us. Here, let me put it back to the main camera here. There we go.
Yep.
Thanks for hanging out with us. And
Yep, this is awesome. You know what? Every week is getting a little bit better and better, and you guys are participating more and more, and that's awesome. That's
Yep.
what we want.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
It's supposed to be a fun night.
yep.
Nothing. It's all casual. Nothing regimented. It's just all for fun. So
Yep. So please go back and watch this video again if you missed anything, and leave some comments in the in that. So the comments in this video will disappear. We don't know where they go, but they are gone.
oh, they do?
Yep.
Huh.
But
Okay.
so if you have a question, go to the video, go to the live tab when you click on the DCI Motorsports YouTube channel. Click on live, watch that video again, or just go straight to the comments and type in your question.
Yeah, I think if you comment on once it goes to the video side of it,
It will
does-
stay.
Okay, yeah.
But the live right now, it does not.
I gotcha.
Yeah. That's why I want them to, if they have a question, please wait for this video to repost itself in the live section of the YouTube channel page.
Yeah, for sure.
And write your questions in there, and my dad will get them. And
And what you guys, you know what, in that too, let's figure out a topic for next week. I might do the cam degreeing thing next week because that's pretty important. And it's so screwed up now. And shame on me. I'll tell you a story next week, but definitely we'll go over that.
yep. All right, everybody, have a good night, and
Good
we'll
night,
see you
all.
next week.